Hey everyone, my name is Bruce Jans and I am the instructor for Philosophy 5665, which is Knowledge, Responsibility, and Society. And this is a video to basically introduce the course to you. I have a different video that introduces myself, so I'm not going to talk about myself very much here. We're going to focus on the course. So this is a graduate course that is part of the certificate in Theoretical and Applied Ethics that's housed within the philosophy department. This is a course that gets used in a number of different programs as a kind of ethics course, which is great. What that means is that I am well aware of the fact that people are coming into this course, many of them with not a lot of philosophy background, and that's fine. If you have philosophy background coming into this course, that's awesome, that's wonderful. And I will try and challenge those of you who have that background. But if you don't have it, don't worry too much. I know who I'm working with, and I've taught this course for many years, and so we're going to try and make the connections between the kinds of issues I want to talk about in this course, and whatever your background is, whatever your training is, your graduate work is currently, whatever your job is or your profession. That's the kinds of connections I want to make, and you're going to see that as I talk through this, that's really my goal in this course. So let's go over to the module. I'm just going to click over here and you can see the page. And so I've given, on the home page a kind of quick introduction to the course here. Right up at the top there you can see the course introduction video, which you're watching right now. I'm going to put this in an introductory email as well, so you might access it that way. So, I described the course a little bit, and basically the thing you have to know about this course is that it's a bit weird as an ethics course is concerned. When I took ethics as a grad student, and as an undergrad, it really focused on what we call meta-ethics and ethical theory. So we tried to develop ethical structures and kind of debate them and critique them and figure out just what kind of ethical ethical theoretical approach was going to work for basically the world that we live in. And I was always a little bit uneasy with that kind of fairly abstract sort of approach. And so this course really is, I think, a breath of fresh air. And it's a breath of fresh air because of the three terms in the title of the course. Knowledge, responsibility, and society. So I think of this not just as an ethics course, but as ethics within a particular set of questions that we might ask. So let's take those words apart. Knowledge. Well, for a philosopher, that means epistemology. So big word if you don't have a philosophy background, but really it's about what do we know, what could we know, what can we know, what should we know, what right do we have to certain kinds of knowledge or not have rights. How do we know that we know something rather than simply have an opinion about it or a belief in it? What does it take to be able to claim that we know something? How do we deal with the knowledge of others? What do we do with partial knowledge? What kinds of justifications are there for knowledge, and what happens when those come into conflict with each other? So there's a lot of questions around in epistemology, and there's a lot more than I have mentioned here. But really, in some ways, they intersect with questions that we have every day in all sorts of different fields. If you are in, studying something at the graduate level, you are creating knowledge in that field. Let's say you're doing nursing. Well, maybe you're learning to be the best nurse that you can, but you're also creating knowledge about what that actually means, what it means to engage in that profession, with those kinds of sets of imperatives and all of those sorts of things. What constitutes better and worse knowledge for a nurse or for an engineer or for a lawyer or for, really anyone in any profession? So that's the first thing. The second word, knowledge, responsibility. So that's where we're talking about ethics, but a particular kind of ethics, right? An ethics that is lived within the world. It's about what does it mean for us to be responsible people to our worlds, to our professions, to our families, to our colleagues, to our, all of those sorts of things. And so you can see, in the course, description here, I've got some, some questions that can be raised about those, about the nature of responsibility. Responsibility to whom? For what? Are we as individuals responsible, or is it possible to imagine us responsible as groups? Do corporations have responsibilities? Do families? Do nations? Where does responsibility lie? There are related terms like trust and care and consequence, desire. All of these sorts of things are related to questions around responsibility. The third concept in the title is society. And what I mean by that is social institutions, social organizations. So you could think of everything from corporations to professions, the legal profession, journalism, the university, religious structures of various sorts, all sorts of different kinds of institutions and organizations that we have in society. And so the question really is, how does ethics happen when we take into account that it happens within these institutional and organizational settings, and when we take into account the different kinds of knowledge that we may or may not have within those settings. And so for me, this is really a much more grounded sort of notion of ethics, and really kind of reflects the questions that we really have in this world. And so I've made a list of a few of them here. Is there a link between self-knowledge and virtue? What does responsibility look like in a digital world? Do corporations have responsibility past the profit motive? How do our institutions relate to our ethical limits and possibilities? What are our obligations to the environment? What does our artistic responsibility look like? What does a responsibility towards other nations look like? Responsibility for past injustices. So you can see there's a lot of different kinds of questions that can cluster around these three things, these three concepts, when they are put together. This to me is a much more interesting kind of a space of inquiry about ethics, and so that's what we're going to be doing this term. So to that end, let me show you the schedule, and then I'm going to go and talk a little bit about the work that's going to be involved and things like that. So the schedule here, you can see that we're going to start off in the first few weeks. Well, let me back up for a second and talk about how the modules themselves work. Right now you are in the first module of this course. It opens on the first day of classes. This particular module is only 2 days long. And after that, every module will run for a week. It will run from a Wednesday morning to a Tuesday evening. And that'll be the pattern throughout the entire term. Okay, so 1 week modules, Wednesday to Tuesday evening. And so after this first module, you can see here that we've got a number of areas within philosophy in which we have to think about these three concepts. What is epistemology? What is ethics or responsibility? What is social organization look like? The reason I have this is that I'm fully aware that a lot of people don't have a lot of background in these questions, at a theoretical level, even though they may have experiential, they've experienced these questions in their own worlds. And so what I want to do is to bring some of the writers, and obviously these are just the tip of the iceberg, but a few writers that are going to help orient us in the space of asking how we can put these things together. In each week of these, we have a number of figures that are within the Western tradition, and at least one figure who is outside of that tradition. And so we're going to try and take into account not just the Western canon and all of this, but what questions get raised outside of that space. And so that's what we're going to do for the first 4 modules, other than the introductory module. The second section is 3 modules, and that is going to be focused on the book by Lorraine Code called Ecological Thinking, The Politics of Epistemic Location. It really, in some ways, is the book that started this whole course off. It's the book where, and Lorraine does just a fabulous job of thinking about how ethics is situated within the spaces of institutions and within the spaces of of what counts as knowledge, what's accepted as knowledge, and all of those sorts of things. And so we're going to be going through that book and looking at what she brings to the table on that. I think she really gives us a kind of lens for thinking about some of these questions. The third section is on bioethics, and the reason I've chosen bioethics, I could have chosen a lot of different kind of areas, but I think there's some really interesting kind of intersections of our kind of core concepts in bioethics. And what we're going to be using to look at that is there was a commission during the Obama years, during Obama's presidency, that looked at these very difficult questions within bioethics and produced a lot of really useful material on those. The website that was created during that time was taken down at the beginning of the next term, his successor, but it was scraped before it came down by Georgetown University. And so it's on their library site, and so we're going to be using their library site for this. They looked at probably 10 or 12 different kinds of questions. We only have time to look at 3. But I think they did a really fine job. The commission involved some just really top-notch and interesting people, both philosophers and people within biological fields, and depending on the issue they were looking at, neurophysiology or epidemiology or all sorts of different things. So we're going to be looking at those 3 as a kind of great way to think about how these concepts of epistemology, ethics, and social institutions come together. After that, we are going to have a section where I have you choose your own text. And I'm going to talk a bit more about that when we talk through the actual work of the course, because that's part of the graded part of the course. From there, we look at the last book of the course called Misinformation by O'Connor and Weatherall. And it really is focused on, as the title suggests, on questions of how epistemology works within a kind of complex society such as ours, what happens when it goes wrong, and what are the ethical questions that arise from that. So that's kind of the schedule for the course. And after that on this page, and this is just the kind of landing page that you have within the course itself, so you'll see it right away, I've got a kind of note on how graduate seminars operate. For many of you, this will be very familiar to you, and so, but it's good to have a refresher on these things. I also have an introductory video for myself after that. If you want to take a look at that and find out who I am, it's all there. So let's bounce over to what's called the Simple Syllabus. This is a tool that we are mandated to use by UCF and the state of Florida. This is a very kind of clunky and awkward version of a syllabus that solves no problems for either faculty or students, but it does enable all syllabi in the state to be surveilled. We are mandated to use it, and I am using it. So if we want to look at what actually is happening in the course, we can scroll through it here. You can see that there's a course description, and a lot of what you just saw on the landing page is here. Course outcomes. The required materials. You can see the 3 that I mentioned here: ecological thinking, misinformation age, and presidential commission study of bioethical issues. The course assessment and grading. This is probably what you're waiting for. There is, first and foremost, and if you've taken any kind of course at UCF already, you'll probably be familiar with this. The financial aid office requires evidence that you started the course, whether you are on financial aid or not. So what I've done is set up what I'm calling a mandatory financial aid quiz that you need to do in the first few days of the course. It's just a quiz within the course shell here. The grade does not count towards your course grade at all, but it will register a grade in the grade book so that the financial aid office knows who started the course and who didn't. Okay, so that's that. Since this is an online course, there is a discussion and participation aspect to it, and that takes the form of discussions within the discussion area in the course shell. Now, some of you may have had a course from me in person, in real life, and you know that I do love my discussions. and they can often be a lot of fun. These are much more difficult to run, but I will tell you this. Sometimes the discussions that I've had in this course have been absolutely spectacular. They have been absolutely wonderful because people have been willing to engage. They've been actually talking to each other. Sometimes it's like pulling hen's teeth. And I'm really hoping for the first rather than the second in this class. Here's how I have it set up. I am asking you to make 2 posts in every module, except for the first 2-day module. Just introduce yourself. That's all you need to do, and that's fine. But thereafter, I'm asking you to do a first post by the Saturday evening of the module, and a second post by the end of the module. And here's why I want you to do that. I am looking for there to be engagement, people to talk to each other, and that's really difficult to do if everyone just posts 5 minutes before the end of the module, right? I mean, nobody can see anything, nobody can talk to anybody at that point. So by the end of the Saturday of the module, I'm looking for some post that's based on. I'll have some prompts. And there will also be, prompts by somebody if there's a presentation in the week. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment. If you do not get 10 out of 10 on your grade for a discussion in a particular module, it may well be because you were late on that first post. I take a little bit off. I am looking for posts that have some substance to them. So, just somebody posting one line of, I agree, or yay you, or whatever. That's not enough, right? I'm looking for some kind of thoughtful engagement. And so, this I am well aware is a mere shadow of a real discussion. But if we're willing to engage it, if all of us are willing to engage it, and I'll be there too, by the way, it can be an interesting discussion. The upside is that people have a chance to kind of reflect on what they want to say and put it down rather than just kind of talking off the cuff. And so sometimes these can be well-considered sorts of posts that people can analyze and respond to. That's great. That's great when that happens. This is not meant to get us all on the same page. It's not meant to get us all agreeing with each other. That's never the point of any of my courses, certainly not this one. The point is to kind of have a real robust discussion based on evidence and argument of kind of important issues. And so I'm hoping you take it seriously because, like I say, sometimes this goes like just great and sometimes it just really does not go very well at all. I will try and kind of, send a note out in a couple of weeks giving you a sense of how I think it's going. But it would be great if you could step up on that. This is a grad course. In most grad courses, there's going to be a seminar presentation. So here is how we're going to do that. I will be setting up a schedule early on in the course, like this week. And I need you to post, if we go back to the discussions area, let me just kind of bounce over here for a second. Over in the discussions area, you're going to see there is a post for signing up for presentations. If you could go in there and give me your top 3 choices of which module you want to present on, then I can set up a schedule. I will do everything that I can to give you your top choice of module. But if I can get your top 3 choices, then when there are conflicts, and there invariably are, then I can sort things out much more easily. So I need you to do that pretty quickly in the term. Really this week, if you can do that, take a look through the readings, take a look through, what we're talking about. There might be something that you're particularly attracted to or interested in. Then go for that. I've given you a discussion here, and there's more discussion within the actual assignment about what a presentation actually is. In an online course like this, normally it takes the form of somebody either doing a PowerPoint that maybe they've talked through the slides, and you can do that if you've never done that before. You can embed your voice as you walk through the slides. Or sometimes people make videos and they upload them to YouTube or whatever and then just send me a link, and that's fine too. But usually there is some way of engaging the material. Here's the thing I'm looking for in a presentation. I'm looking for you to give us a clear sense of what the texts are saying, what the texts are talking about. What are the authors, what are the writers trying to tell us? How does it relate to the central themes of the course? Do these texts give us some insight on ethics, on epistemology, on social organization, social theory? If you have elements from your own study that you feel are relevant, you can bring those in, right? So I want this to be open enough that you can kind of show us a bit, of your own perspective, your own way of thinking about something. Maybe there's a different set of authors that, in your own area you would use on these very similar questions. Well, interesting, bring them in. Maybe there's, authors that you want to bring in that would argue against the authors that I've chosen for any particular week. That is okay too, right? I am not giving you these readings because I think you should believe them or subscribe to anything. I'm giving you these readings because I think they help to define the area of conversation that we are wanting to have here. And so there's not just one voice on these things. And so you may well bring to the table somebody else who has a different perspective, and that's okay. Okay? So I'm looking for you to do a presentation. Once you've chosen a week, and I'm going to put up the kind of presentation schedule. There's not quite enough of us in the class this time around to have one person for each week. So some weeks we are going to effectively be doing this together. You'll all need to read the readings for every week. You don't just wait for the presenter to tell you what's going on. You need to do the readings too. But in a week where there's no presenter, there will be kind of prompts within the discussion area, and you'll have a chance to talk about these within the discussion. So that's the plan on that. And I am happy to kind of, if you have any questions about any of that, I'm more than happy to answer those. I can answer them via email. As I've said in here, there's I can set up a Zoom link with you. If there was interest in a number of people being in on a kind of office hours type discussion or whatever, we can do that too. There's a lot of different ways we could do this, so don't feel like you're just kind of abandoned out there and need to, just figure it out. I already mentioned the review of your choice of course text. You choose your own text. I am really asking you to choose a text that is related to your areas of interest, that might be your profession, that might be the areas that you are going to grad school for, that might just be an area of interest outside of any of that entirely. Any of that is fine, but I'm looking for preferably a book-length text rather than simply an article-length text. I want something that has more of a kind of argument that you can sink your teeth into. I would strongly suggest that you not choose a text that's just simply used as a course introduction text or something like that. So there's a lot of like course textbooks that just simply, are going to give us a survey of, let's say, business ethics or something like that. Well, that's fine for a classroom, but that doesn't really help us get a kind of angle on the questions that we have at stake in this course. So, now's the time when you can start looking for literature that is within your overall area that might be relevant to ethics and the kinds of questions we have here. If you have trouble finding one, we can talk about that. I can try and help you with that. So I'm looking for something there. What you'll need to do, as you can see here, you'll need to do two things. You need to upload a review of that text that I can grade. And then for that particular week in the discussion, I'm also asking for you to upload a short version of your review in the discussion so that people can see it and respond to it. Because I want each of us to learn from each other on this, and this is a good way to do it. So there's two things that you need to do for that. That's due beginning of April, so you've got some time to think about it. But that's meant to be part of the course discussion as well as something that I'm simply using as a grade. The final thing, and this is very standard for a graduate course like this, is a final paper in the course. I have a prospectus due 1 month before the last day of classes. It's graded. In that prospectus, I am looking for you to identify 3 things: your topic that you're writing about, the question that you're writing about, and the thesis. Okay? So I ask for that structure for a very specific reason. If you have all 3 of those, you have the possibility of generating a very clear paper, right? A very clear argument. Just having a topic isn't enough. Let's say you wanted to write about, I don't know, ethics in journalism. Let's just pick a topic out of the air. Well, that's lovely. That's great. But that doesn't really tell us very much yet. You need a question that you're asking within that space. That question might be generated from a specific example of some sort, specific thing that happened. It could come from all sorts of different places, but it needs to be a question, not a bunch of questions, not 10 questions. A question, because that forms the backbone of your paper. That's what you're going to make the argument about. And then the thesis is simply the answer to the question, right? So that's what I'm looking for here as the kind of prospectus. Now, people sometimes ask, well, are we bound to do that? Let's say I change my mind. Let's say I realize that, after thinking about it, I want to change something like that. Great. Not a problem. In fact, people do that all the time. You can do a prospectus and then you can shift it. Sometimes people say, I just realized this is not even possible to do. So I need to do a wholesale change on it. Whatever, that's fine too, right? The point is that this gets you thinking about it a month before rather than 2 days before, and gives you the chance to make those changes if you need to make them. So I've given you some comments on all of that here, and there's more comments again, as I say, in the assignment area on that. But that's the kind of overall grading structure for the course. After that, I've got the assignment links, all of those sorts of things, grading scale, all of that. And then is what I used to call the fine print. And so please look through that. There's a whole bunch of stuff here. Some of it is kind of boilerplate that is mandated by the university to be included. Some of it is stuff that I include over and above that. A lot of the questions you may have might be answered within this space. So there's stuff about attendance. I mean, that's, obviously in an online course, that means something different than a face-to-face course. Incompletes, artificial intelligence, AI policy, basically, which is that any AI tool, use of any AI tool needs to be disclosed, and you'll need to make a case for it. Disability accommodation, academic integrity, Title IX, so this goes kind of on and on. There's lots of it, and then the kind of class schedule, which you already saw in this other space over here. So that is really the kind of bulk of the kind of introduction to the course. Let's go back here. So I hope that you enjoy this course as much as I do. I think this is a lot of fun because it is so relevant, right? This is a course in which we are really just thinking about ethics in a manner that's not just, let's say, that abstract sort of notion like a trolley problem or something like that, where people, want to give you an ethical problem where you have to make a decision at the last minute. Do you throw a switch this way and kill these people, or throw a switch that way and kill those people? I always want to ask, what led up to that? Like, why are we in that situation in the first place? Was somebody, did somebody design this system in such a way that it could be abused like that? Who thought this was a good idea to do? All sorts of questions that really come long before those kinds of do or die kinds of questions at the end. For me, that's where all of the ethical stuff comes, up to that point. I'm never very comfortable with that do or die situation because, it speaks to me of lots and lots of ethical failures up until that point. And so I'm interested really in thinking about those ethical moments that precede that, that are not just about applying a abstract ethical theory to the stuff of the world. This is a world that we live in, right? And that we understand at a kind of visceral bodily level, not just at a kind of abstract intellectual level. And so I want to really take this course, take that seriously in this course, because I think it really helps us integrate ethics into our actual lives, into our professional practices, into our academic work, all of those sorts of things, instead of it just being a box you've checked off. Yeah, I took my ethics thing, taken care of, no problem, I must be ethical now. Not quite how it works. So anyway, I am looking forward to seeing all of you in this course. Looking forward to meeting you in the first module. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about your background. Let's get this started. This is going to be fun.